Clear prop. Hello and welcome to another episode of Terminal Talk Radio. This is Steve and Mike. We're excited to be here. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year.
Today we're going to dive in to our topics. We're going to start off with another portion of our website to help better understand the steps to become a pilot. We're going to start off today talking about the private pilot license.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the private is pretty important. You know, it's the foundation. It's where you're going to get all of your initial training. Some of the basics, you know, just to touch base on it, 40 hours minimum times. You're going to have to hit certain night requirements, along with a little bit of instrument training. But it's fairly simple. You'll solo, do some cross countries. And, you know, you're limited to VFR flying. Do you want to maybe touch base on that a little bit, Steve?
Right, yeah. So with all licenses, you're going to have limitations or, you know, certain areas where you'll, you know, be able to perform those pilot duties. With the private pilot license, it's the most standard. Like Mike was mentioning, you're limited to visual flight rules. They call it VFR, where you'll have to have pretty good visibility. You can't be, you know, flying in clouds and such like that. You'll get, you know, some instrument training just to help you out and get an understanding of it, but not enough to, you know, fully fly through clouds or limited visibility. So, but we did want to start with the private license. One thing I will touch on real quick is you might be confused if you do hear about a sport license or a recreational license. Those have a few more limitations on them with passengers, aircraft size, distance you can travel, time of day you can travel, things like that, where, you know, for just a little bit more, like Mike was saying, you know, it's only 40 hours is the minimum requirement. It's you know, pretty much worth it to just go straight for the private license.
Right.
You know, start
and
I mean,
if you're seriously interested in wanting to make aviation into a career, from even just a financial standpoint, you probably don't even really want to consider a sport or a light sport license, just due to the cost that you're going to have to spend when, you know, ultimately you're going to need the private pilot's license anyways.
Exactly.
So you may as well just jump into it and, you know, go full throttle towards the private.
Definitely. I just wanted to also touch on the training materials that are available through our pilot shop are going to be a great help to you as you're jumping into the private license. It's going to include everything you'll need for, you know, your flying as you're getting started, the knee board, the headset, everything's there. So you'll be ready to go. You'll be geared up. And a lot of that will even carry you through, you know, the additional phases of flying. So make sure to stop by the webpage, flighttrainingterminal.com. Check out the pilot shops and get those bundles so you'll be all set for your flight training.
The essentials. So one of our listeners, Shane, he emailed us and he had a pretty good question, you know, probably a question that comes up, you know, more often than not, especially now with the current pilot shortage going on. So he asked us the question of, you know, what other opportunities exist outside of, you know, building flight hours, you know, being a flight instructor, you know, which is a good point. I mean, I think many student pilots are probably under the impression that, you know, flight instruction may be the only avenue to build your hours, but there are other opportunities out there, you know, such as banner towing, you know, some small charter or cargo companies may be willing to pick you up with only a few hundred hours. You know, there's surveying jobs and even aerial photography. So, you know, they're out there, you know, you have to look, but, you know, with the current state of affairs, those positions might be opening and becoming a little bit more prevalent. I mean, do you have any experiences with these types of positions, Steve?
A little bit. And one thing I did want to mention is where there is a lot of attention right now at the regional airline level where they're getting, you know, the most hit with this pilot shortage. Just keep in mind that that is rippling through the rank, so to speak. So there are going to be a lot more positions opening up, a lot more opportunity for those that don't have the CFI that still want to build up that 1,500 hours, quickly and efficiently by using their commercial licenses, their commercial privileges. They can go on and like Mike was saying, use some of those smaller gigs to build up that time. And there are, a lot more than you might think. You just have to dig around. It might require a little bit of relocating, a little sacrifice there, but will be worth it. One thing to consider is the cost of the CFI, the CFII, and the MEI. If you put that towards, just flying on your own or building flight time, splitting flight time, that might be able to get you enough hours to get to a small cargo or corporate gig where you could, bypass that if you feel, you're not cut out for instructing or whatever your reason may be. There are plenty of other options. So always remember that even though we might touch on, doing it one way, doesn't necessarily mean there aren't other ways to go about it. But definitely do your research and find whichever route works best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Steve, what's your take on that? I know myself, I have some experience flying, and, I thought about it and everything. And, instructing that is not necessarily for everyone. I sometimes wonder, how would I be as an instructor? I'm not sure. Being a teacher, to me, just on the ground in general, teaching a class of students would be difficult. I wouldn't have an easy time doing it, so trying to do that in the air as well, I really tip my hat off to the guys who can go out there and do it. What do you think? You think
right? No, yeah. It really is something that everyone kind of has to decide on. Sure, it is a great way to build time. It's a fast way to build time, especially right now. I'm sure there are plenty of CFI jobs open. The thing to really just consider is like you were saying, just be honest with yourself. If it's something you feel you're not going to be happy with, it's, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to get those CFI certificates and then to, put yourself, out there to instruct. So myself, I've also kind of thought about that in my shoes of where I would go. And I think I would lean more towards, eventually I would want to get the CFI licenses or the ratings just to have them, be able to help, maybe my kids or friends, but not necessarily doing it as a job. So I think I would, look more into those other opportunities, flying 135 or 91, something like that to, build up the flight time that way. So, but again, it just depends on the person, depends on your goals. If you're looking to, do the CFI route, it's definitely, proven. Most people do it that way, but again, not the only route.
True. Very true. There's been a lot of interesting stories out there in recent events in aviation.
Always exciting.
For sure. One of them being this AAA incident where the passenger snuck on the flight. You hear about that?
Oh yeah, I sure did. So flight.
It's actually pretty comical.
It is. It really is. It's pretty crazy that this happened. But plane takes off from LAX for Japan. 4 hours in, they realize there's a passenger on board that shouldn't have been. So they ended up turning around, which is pretty devastating. That's a long enough flight as it is. But to get 4 hours in and have to turn back to LA, don't blame the passengers for being pretty upset about that one.
Yeah, it's just wild to me. One, I know I found out from John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, not to name drop, and I'm just joking. Saw that on Twitter. But anyways, it's just crazy to think, what are those ticket scanners really doing?
Right, yeah. How did that get through there?
How did this guy just blend in the mix? It doesn't make any sense. Well, what are those barcodes actually scanning? Are they actually doing anything? I don't know. For all we know, we just put a piece of paper up there, you put your phone in, it just turns green.
Sure.
Your thoughts on that?
There's a few things to consider. Yeah, the boarding pass. What's going on with that? What about the boarding procedure? Why did it take 4 hours for them to find out that the wrong person was on board? I feel like there were a few levels here that, did not work or failed there. So I'm definitely interested to keep reading on this one, seeing what they find and seeing how they plan to fix the issues like this from happening in the future.
I hope it gets resolved fast. Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's model wife, not happy about it. We can't have that. We can't have a Twitter
As I'm
blow up.
sure there were 124 other people or 224 other passengers not happy either. It's
Right.
pretty
Well,
crazy how many people were affected by that one mistake. And it
but
seems like, where they all had to go back, it seems like that, I don't know, maybe shouldn't have worked the way it did. I'm not sure if they maybe had a procedure for something like this. But yeah, that messed up a lot of things for a lot of people.
just a very, very unfortunate series of events.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of airlines, I don't know if you saw this as well, just, very recent, but Turkish Flight lands on the runway and the dang thing almost goes in the Black Sea. Just goes over a cliff.
No, if you haven't seen pictures for this, definitely go check it out. Very, very interesting to see a plane, barely hanging on, and crazy events. Nothing official out that I've seen as to what happened. Apparently, the aircraft, it's a 737, skids off the runway off the side and barely misses the Black Sea. It's pretty picture.
I've seen snakes on a plane. Haven't seen planes on a cliff. Couldn't imagine being one of the passengers on that flight.
That would be very different from most situations where it wasn't an emergency landing, just normal procedure there. But 1 minute you're coasting down the runway, the next you're sliding off a cliff.
Unbelievable. I don't know. Something had to happen there.
Yeah.
You think it was a landing gear situation? You think?
I would wonder maybe a tire blew on landing, or I can't really tell from the pictures. I don't know. Maybe the gear claps. I don't know.
I know it's bizarre. I mean, I hate to think this, but you think maybe the pilots were feeling a little saucy?
It could have been after a long flight. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they lost track of time. Time zones. I'm sure that starts to wear on you. So there's a lot of variables here that we have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing their investigation.
All speculation. Yeah, we'll see what the official reports say and go from there. But definitely interesting
for sure. Well, that's another episode of Terminal Talk Radio. Thanks for stopping by.